Right guys, this time I'm going to do a video on launchers and grenadiers using one or two perks, and eventually I'll show you a combination of a launcher with a grenadier loadout using 3 perks, which isn't obviously until you get all those unlocked, which could take a while. First thing I'm going to do, go to third person. This is the guy from the previous video with an MX, standard MX, not the MXSW, which is the one I'll recommend eventually, which is a machine gun. But that's your standard gear. He's got a carrier rig, but he hasn't got a helmet, so the carrier rig's not brilliant. You can see there. It's not bad. The pelvis 6 compared to pelvis 22, so that's the main difference in terms of the carrier rig. So I'm going to select this. So this hopefully by now would have been unlocked. It's your standard infantryman. And even your squad and team leaders and everything are going to be wearing this gear so that they don't stand out. So yeah, that's what you want to get. Now, as far as perks, I'm going to show you. I'm assuming that after the medic you unlock launcher. I might not be right about that. It might be in a different order. But I'm assuming that you start from the top and work your way down the list. So if we assume that launch was the next thing that opens up, and I'll show you the basic launchers. We've got the MX rifle as the standard primary weapon. The first thing that unlocks is this, the RPG-42. I permanently bought that a long time ago, and I would recommend you do, because it's very handy on servers with tanks. So this is very good for armor penetration. Now what we'll do is, I'm going to fire at buildings. It's not really going to do a lot to these buildings, because it can go straight through. But I'm going to fire it actually at the door. We'll just go through the door. Now that's not a large explosive effect. Pretty much it should just go through the door, but it's not going to necessarily blow up the building or anything like that. Bear in mind, buildings don't have armor. So, I think in real life that would actually go through the door. But yeah, it's not a large explosive effect as compared to, if I now get, you don't get to unlock this for quite a while. It's the HE version, that's high explosive. By the way, what I should mention is that the MAAWS launchers and this Verona are in the Tanks DLC. So they're only available if you've got the Tanks DLC. Vanilla game has these, PCML, RPG-7, and this RPG-42 here. I'll show you the explosive effect, much larger. So it's good against infantry and even good against buildings, but actually very ineffective against any kind of armor. So I'm just going to fire at the door again. The thing with this is it may take the building down. See if we can take the building down. There it's going. No, surprised it hasn't actually taken the building down yet. You would think by now that door would be caved in, but alas no. I'm going to just try one reload. Rearm and restore. Go that out again. There we go. Building goes down. Now that wouldn't have happened with just AT rounds, because the AT round would just penetrate straight through and not really cause a large explosion. So HE, very useful against infantry. Fire it into a window of a building or something like that. And it's pretty effective. Actually, some buildings over here, so we can get it through a window on one of these buildings. The downstairs window there. Don't know how far away this is. Let's see if we can get it. Just hit on the outside of the wall, I think that did. You can see how large that explosion is anyway. So yeah, there's your RPG. Bit of a funny angle. There's an open door there. Yeah, that went in, but not a huge explosion. If I'd have fired in there with the HE variant of this, short. Anyway, next, so we get rid of the launcher perk. We're going to assume that you've only got 1 or 2 perks. Get launcher, we're going to miss marks and machine gunner because I'm going to talk about that later. The explosive perk, see how that's now turned this weapon into, it's got a GL underneath that GL. So I fire that, you press F once you go to full auto, press F again and it takes you to the GL and then it goes thuk, thuk. And it's a 3 GL, so it means it's 3 rounds before you have to reload. That first round would have hit the chopper, I think. So basically, the only problem with the 3 GL is it's really hard to get a decent, to get your range right on it. It'll rest on here. And the last, you see I've reloaded, the last 3 rounds are actually blue smoke, so look, it's just this stuff. Oh, yes, it's not. Are you gonna do anything? Yeah, blue smoke. That's pretty crazy. It used to be that each round was an explosive round, but they've done an update so that it also does smoke for the last round. Now, if I then add the ammo perk, you really need the ammo perk for this, because without the ammo perk, you've hardly got anything, and you've used it up, and that's it, game over. You know, you've used all your rounds, which isn't really very useful. So it kind of makes it a bit redundant. Now, oh, of course, you can range. I'll just change the range. So we change the range. So let's have a look. There's a window there. I'm not going to be able to get it in that window. It's going to I think it's going to be short. Yeah, it's pretty short. Increase the range to 150. Still, I doubt very much if I'll get it in that window. Okay, let's try this window instead. Might even just go over the wall. So. Oh! Well, that wasn't too bad. Pretty powerful. Surprised that actually did any damage to the building. See if we can get it in there. Nice bit short. So you can see it's got a reasonable explosive effect, but they're not as powerful as not as powerful as a single shot GL. So the main thing to bear in mind is that you really need 2 perks to be a grenadier. You need ammo and explosive. You also get, if you can get the launcher as well, you get an extra rocket or missile, whatever you've got, if you have the explosive perk. So it's worth having those 3 together. Now I'll just show you what a single shot, larger. So you see the Spar has got a GL, Katiba's got a GL, MX has got a GL available, and then the AK-12 there has one. But also the base weapon has a GL, so if you don't want to permanently buy anything, or you can't be bothered to buy anything, actually I'll try that out. Let's go launcher, the basic launcher there. See how you got an extra rocket there? 3 instead of 2? That's from the explosive perk, so that's why it's a good combination to have. So now I've got the TRG. Press F once, press F a second time, and this is a single instead of the 3GL being 3, and it's a larger explosive effect. I'm not sure, so I'll just increase the range to 200. But you have to reload each shot. So it's handy with the 3GL in case you miss the first shot, you can still hit with the next 2. There's quite a bit of power. I'm at 200, so I'm going to aim a bit low now. You see, hit it in the roof there. That's what I mean by the ranging being really awkward. It's very hard to get this spot on. There we go. But there is a slightly larger explosive effect with this compared to the 3GL rounds, which are smaller individually. I just sort of show it at shorter range. Oops, I've gone over the top because I forgot to change my range. I could take it down to 50. And the other thing is that they don't arm until they go over about 50 meters. There we go. Yeah, you need to reload each time. There we go. of course you can get a Katiba. I quite like the Katiba one. So the TRG and the Katiba and the MX all have quite a decent scope for the grenade launcher. So that, again, you have to reload each shot. But some weapons have a really awful scope. Can't remember which ones, but I think the AK-12's got a really nasty looking scope on it. Let me check. AK-12 and FF. Well, that's weird. I thought I had a strange. Oh yeah, this scope. It's alright at short range, but basically, yeah, that's not as quite a nice a scope for the GL as the others. You don't need to worry about that because that's not going to unlock for a while. So that's your basic loadout for Grenadiers, ammo and explosive. Add a launcher if you can. It's not worth necessarily getting launcher and explosive just to have a launcher. So what you don't want to do is get something like explosive and get a rifle that doesn't have a grenade launcher on it. That would be a waste. Or say having launcher, explosive and machine gunner, because then you kind of miss out on having a GL. I don't use explosive myself really at all, because otherwise it's just a waste of a perk really. So there we go, Grenadier and some basic launchers. I'll just quickly show you the MAAWS launcher. Oh god. So the launcher perk. I'll get the explosives perk so you can see the three. So the MAAWS launcher, I've got these permanently bought. The high explosive range tank and the HE. I've permanently bought those. Might as well show you the HE one because it's a larger explosion. Right, MAAWS launcher. Now the thing with the MAAWS launcher is it goes very straight. Let's look at something. So I'm just going to hit and building out over here. Ooh, big explosion. So this is going to take this building out of it. Oh god, yeah. 2 shots and the building is very severely damaged. See if I can bring it right down to the last shot. And the smoke clears. Okay. No, I don't think it's actually gone down fully. But that's the MAAWS launcher. Longer range, straighter, so that you know, anything up to 200 meters. If you look at the scope, I'll show you the scope again. You can see how 200 is there, then 400, 600, 800. So yeah, it's got a pretty 1,000. It's got a good range on it compared to if you look at the scope on one of these. You can see how that's just 50, 100, 150, and 500 is max. Oh, it's going to go over actually. That is. There's a this over here. Okay, so in the middle somewhere. Oh, it's just short slightly. Right, so that I should hope has covered grenadiers and launchers. And next I'll be talking about machine guns.